Thank you for joining me today on the Leadership Center. We are talking about leaders and feelings. Now, listen, before you go running for tissues or thinking that this is going to be a crying session, it's not like that at all. And many times we don't necessarily connect leaders and feelings. It's more about accomplishments and return on investment and EBITDA and that sort of thing. But let me give you the backdrop, my friends, just for a moment. I'm with a friend of mine, a former not only colleague, but my boss. He was my boss at a major Canadian retailer. We worked at actually two companies together. One was a division of the other. And since then, he has bought and sold companies. And so he's an entrepreneur and has been very, very successful. And in the course of being together just recently in the United States, of all places, I asked him the question, what do you believe was the secret to your success? What do you believe was the secret to your success? His answer shocked me a little bit and really caused me to think. But he said to me, Tony, I wanted people to feel a certain way. I wanted people to experience a feeling of some kind. He said, that's really what I focused on. And out of that, the success, productivity, proficiency, EBITDA, profits, all the things that we look for as leaders all kind of came out of what he was saying. And so I said, but what do you mean? What do you mean you wanted people to feel what? What is it exactly that you wanted people to experience? And so we began to talk about things like the sense of belonging, that people are part of an organization that is bigger than them, but not so big that they don't see themselves within it or they don't see themselves fitting into it. We talked about things, how it creates this motivation to want to get up in the morning and not drudgingly come into work, but rather be excited and be creative and be passionate. Why? What were people feeling? Well, he wanted them to feel value. He wanted them to feel things like respect and honor, that they were more than just a number, that they were more than just someone else on a payroll, but that they really mattered. He talked about, in the retail sense of things, when he would go into various stores, that he took time to, quote unquote, speak to maybe the least of those that are in there. In other words, don't just run for the owners and the managers and people in positions of authority, but frontline workers. Can I say it that way? Frontline workers, maybe the receiver in the back room or in the basement where people don't even acknowledge them, or certainly if people are coming from the office or places of headquarters or authority, they don't really matter in conversations. But for him, it was important that he spoke to them. And that in itself, think about this. You have a high-ranking official coming from the office or the owner himself of the organization, coming to speak to, quote unquote, the least. Think about how that would make that individual feel, the importance, the value. And by the way, these conversations obviously have to be genuine, right? We're not trying to manipulate people or blowing smoke. I'm not trying to instill that in you, but rather that you would genuinely care about that person as a human being, as an employee, as part of the company and what they contribute. And then asking questions, well, what are you experiencing? What are you hearing? What are you going through? What are customers saying? What are other staff members saying? Engaging them in conversations, in thoughts, in ideas. You'd be surprised. Some of the best ideas don't always come from management and leadership level. Many times they come right from the frontline people who are working sometimes with customers. And so, we used to have this philosophy that said, if you're not serving a customer, then serve someone who is. Should I say that again? If you're not serving a customer, then serve someone who is. And so I was absolutely enthralled. I kept trying to draw more and more information out of him about this concept of how do you make people feel that they are valued, that they are important, that they matter, that they make a difference, and that people, particularly people in places of leadership positions, are taking the time to engage with them, to acknowledge them, to listen to them. And by the way, not only the beefs and the complaints, although, that might be an issue as well. I remember having many conversations about the lunchroom isn't big enough and we don't have a fridge and so on and so forth. But engaging them in deep, thoughtful conversations regarding your business. My friends, you would be surprised what they know that maybe they're not even saying because they may not believe it is a safe environment. So as a leader, yes, you have tremendous responsibilities, but have you ever thought about this? How do I impact my people? How do I make them feel? We could say this is morale. Some people might say, well, what's the vibe? What's the vibe of the business or a particular location? Many, many terms that are used to describe this, but how do we get there? It's actually not as complicated as you may think. It's actually quite simple when you talk about things like honor and respect and dialoguing with people and listening that gives people that sense of I'm heard, that sense of I'm valued, that sense of I'm important and I'm critical and obviously affirming people to say, listen, we can't do what we do without you. You're absolutely essential. You're absolutely important. And smiling, listen, just things like smiling and being warm and kind and considerate. Wow, these are some words and some emotional intelligence things that we should go back to doing as leaders. My friends, listen, the impact, the morale, the creativity, your people, the passion, the energy that your organization will experience will be off the charts. So I'm challenging you as leaders. How do you think you make your people feel?